So in the prayer book, the spiral prayer book, we'll start on page 73. Page 73. So just open your book, and then again, before we actually read from the prayer book, we'll do a little meditation first. So first get comfortable on your cushion. Sit in the meditative posture. So we'll do a short meditation to focus the mind and generate positive motivation. So mindfully relax each part of your body, beginning with the crown of your head and scanning through your body down to the soles of your feet. Check that you're balanced, comfortable, relaxed. Each part of your body is relaxed. And then gradually draw your attention to your breath or another object of meditation. And then we'll spend about 3 minutes just practicing placement meditation. Just watching the breath or another object of meditation. So then generate a positive motivation. So you can remember how on this last session of looking at the Heart Sutra, how Shakyamuni Buddha taught the sutra over 2,500 years ago. In order to, seeing that all sentient beings suffer, or are trapped in samsara, and experience all the ocean of samsaric sufferings due to ignorance. So then wishing to free sentient beings from all forms of suffering, free them from samsara and lead them to perfect enlightenment. And for that reason the Buddha taught the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, and within those, this very short version of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, the Heart Sutra. So then think about for you yourself what that, in light of that, then what kind of motivation you want to set in order to study and reflect on and meditate on the Heart Sutra. So then, with a positive motivation, a bodhisattva motivation, wishing to achieve enlightenment in order to free all sentient beings from suffering. Then we visualize Shakyamuni Buddha in the space in front of us, sitting on a jeweled throne, wearing the robes of a fully ordained monk, his right hand palm down on his right knee in the mudra of witnessing the truth, and his left hand in his lap, palm up in the mudra of meditative concentration. He smiles upon you with great affection. He's very delighted that you're engaging in Dharma practice. And then on a table in front of Shakyamuni Buddha is the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, resounding with the sound of the sutras. And then to Buddha's right and left. To Buddha's right is Maitreya, the Bodhisattva Maitreya. To his left, Bodhisattva Manjushri. And then all the great scholar practitioners of the path of the vast deeds and the path of profound practice, the lineage of profound practice, right down to your own spiritual teachers of this life who are inheritors of those two lineages. So then generate a mind of refuge, having faith that the Buddha Dhamma Sangha has the power and skill to free oneself and others from suffering and lead one to fearless happiness of full enlightenment. So with that mind, then we'll read this praise to Shakyamuni Buddha on page 73 and the other prayers that follow. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, endowed to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely, fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O Supreme amongst humans, you are born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme science, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are known. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one gone to vastness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality. To the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bound with bodies as many as all realms, atoms, in all aspects. With supreme faith, I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through these merits and sentient beings, attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the 4 faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. Sutra. I prostrate to the eye of Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on the mass of Vultures Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of lineage or daughter of lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, causation factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no combination of factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no eye element, and so on, up to including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas are alone and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration, without fear. Having completely passed beyond error to reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifested, completely awakened, to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment, and relaxed in the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as the truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhiswaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration, and to many the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said, well said, son of lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. And then at the bottom of 81, prayer to light-faced Dakini, I prostrate to the gathering of Dakinis and the three chakras, who abide in the holy yoga of using space, by your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation. Look after practitioners like a mother of her child. Akasamana Sachidana Samana. Samana Sasadana Samana Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhiswaha. By the teaching of the three supreme jewels possessing the power of truth, the inner and outer intrusions be transformed, and they be expelled, and they be pacified. Shantin Kuri Swaha. May all negative forces opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with Dharma, and may there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here right now. Let's see, shall we recite the lineage gurus? We'll recite just a few verses from the lineage gurus. So requesting prayer to lineage, Lamrim lineage gurus. Magnificent, precious Guru, please abide on lotus and moonseed of my crown. Guide me with your great kindness, and grant me the realization realizations of the Holy Body, speech, and mind. The founder of Bhagawan, the incomparable guide, the invincible Lord Maitreya, the conqueror's region, Arya Sangha, and those whose coming was prophesied by the conqueror, to you three Buddhas and Bodhisattvas I make request. Vasubandhu, crown ornament of this world's memories. Arya Vimuktasena, who found the middle path. Vimuktasena Gomu, noble foundation of the abiding faith. To you three who open the eyes of the world I make request. Paramasena, who has exalted and marvelous accomplishments. Vinitasena, who trained his mind in profound path. Rauchana, a treasury of great ways of conduct. To you three friends of migratory beings I make request. Haribhadra, who composed vast treaties on the supreme path of the Prajnapani Buddha. Kusali, holder of all the conqueror's instructions. Ramasena, who lovingly cared for all beings. To you three helmsmen of sentient beings I make request. Savana Vipa, who realized Bodhicitta and his holy mind. Atisha, who upheld the tradition of the great vehicle. Precious Dome Tempa, who clarified the noble path. 2 3 pillars of the teachings I make request. To Lord Buddha, so then requested the lineage, the wisdom lineage. To Lord Buddha, pinnacle of the Shaktas, supreme guide, fearless and explaining emptiness. On to achieve total unity of all the Buddha's infinite wisdom. The supreme Arya, Nagarjuna, who saw the profound meaning. To you three crown ornaments of the ones I make request. Chandikirti, who clarified the Arya's intentions. Vidikotula, the elder, intelligent elder son. Vidikotula, the younger, a conqueror's son. To you three powerful, intelligent ones I make request. Atisha, who saw the profound end of illusion arising just as it is. Who upheld the tradition of the great vehicle. Precious Dome Temple, who clarified the noble path. To you two ornaments of this world I make requests. So then we'll skip to page 91. Page 91. So right on the last line of the dot 91 there's a request to His Holiness Dalai Lama. So we'll read from that down. Noble heart, with all the wisdom of a conqueror, principal embodiment of all the famous teachings of the conquerors, protector emanated from the ocean of infinite mandalas. To you, Kanguru, Maolos, and Tenzin Legtsok I make request. With his strong shoulders of learning and practice, who patiently establish in all directions the stainless banner of the Buddhist teachings, especially the teachings of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. I make request to you, Tupten Sopa. Eyes to view all the vast teachings, supreme gateway to liberation for the fortune, using skillful means to readily subdue, to the illuminating spiritual friends I make request. May I not arise heresy even for a second in the actions of the glorious Guru. May I guard whatever actions are done as pure. With this devotion may I receive the Guru's blessing in my heart. And then we'll go ahead and recite this, the foundation of all good qualities. This is a long word. The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and perfect pure Guru. Direct devotion to him is the root of power. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon him with great respect. Understanding that the precious freedom of this reserve is found only once, is great and meaningful and is difficult to find within it. Please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly day and night takes its essence. This life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the light, the results of black and white time follow. Finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negativities, and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Seeking some time, please Lord to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Led by this pure thought, mindfulness, awareness, and great passion arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the fighting moksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all other migratory beings. Please bless me to see this, train supreme bodhicitta, and bear the responsibility of free migratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta, but I don't practice the 3 types of morality, I will not achieve enlightenment. With my clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows with great energy. Once I have pacified distractions to wrong objects and correctly analyzed the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate kuti within my mind stream, unified path of karma body and special insight. Having become a pure vessel by training the general power, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate one, the supreme Vajra vehicle. At that time, the basis of accomplishing the true attainments is keeping pure vows and samadhi. As I have become firmly convinced of this, please bless me to protect these vows and pledges throughout my life. Then, having realized the importance of this to taste the essence of the Vajrayana, by practicing with great energy in every evening of the 4 sessions, please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. Like that, may the Gurus who show the noble path and the spiritual friends who practice it have long lives. Please bless me to pass it by completely, while honoring any hindrances. In all my lives, never separated from the perfect Gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma, by completing the qualities of the stations house. May I quickly attain the state of Vajra Dharma. I'm going to make a short mandala offering on page 98. Page 98. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Mary, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offering. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to teach the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to explain the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So today we're going to review the entire Heart Sutra. So in this blue book, blue spiral bound book, you can open to the Heart Sutra itself, the second version of the Heart Sutra, which is just after the pink page at the beginning. It's about the 7th or 8th page of the book. Or it has page 1, it says the heart of the transcendent and victorious perfection of Buddha. Heart Sutra. Yeah. Yeah, so we'll just go through the sutra. I just want to do an overview of the whole sutra. And point out all the main sections. And then if you have any questions, I can try to answer questions. And then, yeah, I don't know. We'll see how long that takes us. Okay, so this is the Heart Sutra. So, yeah, we've been going through it for a few months now, 3 or 4 months, I think. And yeah, we've been studying it, reading it, discussing it. Have any of you tried to memorize the Heart Sutra?
Yes.
Yes? How's it gone?
I've done it.
You've done it? Wow, very good. Anybody else?
Yeah. Yeah.
You memorized it?
Yeah.
Also you?
Yeah.
Oh wow, excellent. In English or Tibetan?
English.
All in English. This version? Or the one in the FPMT prayer book version?
Yeah, this one.
The FPMT, yeah, that's probably more.
That's the one.
useful.
That's the one in the last book of this book.
Is it? Okay, yeah, same. Okay. Oh, I should have asked you to recite it from memory for us to begin. Very good. Very happy to hear that. Yeah, even before I was Buddhist, actually, when I came to, before I actually took refuge in 1999, I came to Asia to study meditation, especially. So I first went to Thailand. So even when I was in Thailand, I met some people who were students of like a Kagyu Nyingma teacher. But they suggested that it's very good practice to recite the Heart Sutra every day, to memorize and recite it every day. So even then, before I was Buddhist, I memorized it and recited it every day. So I think from then until now, I recite it every day. It's very good practice to do. Usually now, I recite it like because I've been reciting it so much, it's very easy to do. So usually, whenever I leave the house in one day, when I leave the house for the first time and I start walking down the road, then I recite it and try to just to remember to see everything, myself and everything in the nature of emptiness. I think also I started doing that, like doing it when I was walking, because Lama Zopa. I remember once Lama Zopa Rinpoche was speaking about how, it's so important not just to meditate when we're sitting on the cushion, but when we're doing everything every day, whether we're walking or, traveling or, washing or eating, then it's always important to try to remember, especially, if we're practicing the Mahayana, the two attitudes of bodhicitta, may I become enlightened in order to benefit all sentient beings, and then the view of emptiness, that everything is interdependent arising and empty of inherent existence. So Rinpoche was, especially that time Rinpoche was talking about, it's so important even when you're walking down the road or, to learn to do these practices like while you're doing other things. Which doesn't have to mean reciting, but the mindfulness is important, but of course, if you can recite the words from memory, that's very helpful. So, so that's kind of one of my own little rituals is every day when I leave the house for the first time, walking down the road. Like just now when I left the hotel to come here, then I recited the Heart Sutra. Okay, so let's go through the Heart Sutra. So we begin with the title. So there's the title in Sanskrit, and then the title in, well actually here is the way it's ordered. There's a title in Tibetan. Actually it should be the title in Sanskrit, then the title in Tibetan, and then the title in English. We can add that to the English translation. So the title is added in Sanskrit at the beginning in order to remind us that actually the Buddha taught the sutra in Sanskrit. That's the original language, and also it's added as to make an auspicious connection with the language Sanskrit, because even by Buddhists, the Sanskrit language is considered to have a special blessing, to have a special power. So it's considered auspicious that to start the sutra, even though it's translated all in. This English translation is translated from Tibetan, right? So even though it's translated, well, in Tibetan, let's say, then they start with the Sanskrit. I wonder, have you recited the Heart Sutra in Chinese?
Not really. I Googled it in one sung by one Malaysian Chinese. It is really good. This Pancha Skandhas.
Yeah.
That is
that's in here, yeah.
Yeah. So I listened to that song. So if it started playing, then I can follow like that. So
but I was wondering, in the Chinese translation, do they also start with the Sanskrit or not? I don't know.
Some part like Bodhisattva, they will translate into Chinese.
Right.
In that sound,
right.
Then you recite it like that.
Yeah.
So a little bit off. So that's why I go for the Sanskrit original one.
Oh really? Okay. Okay. Anyway, so they start with the Sanskrit, then the title in Tibetan, and then in the English translation, it'd be good actually to say that in the language of, I don't know, England. Then you could say the Heart Sutra. And then, okay, so that's the title. Then there's the obeisance to the transcendent and victorious perfection of wisdom. Well, why don't I read it? In the language of India, Bhagavati Prajna Paramita Shrida. In the language of Tibet, Chomden Dema Sharaki Paro Duchimbe Ningbo. So.
Actually, there are so many languages in India actually written in Sanskrit.
Yeah.
After the Buddha,
it is written in Sanskrit.
I know, but what said here is language of India.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. There's so many. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so then in English, it's the heart of the transcendent and victorious perfection of wisdom. So then it says obeisance to the transcendent and victorious perfection of wisdom. So that line, that obeisance, is again added by the Tibetan translators. It's not part of the original sutra. And the reason they add that is as a way of, there's two main reasons. One is, the main reason is in order to, as a way of purifying negative karma and obstacles to completing the translation, and also accumulating merit to complete the translation. By making an obeisance at the beginning, then you purify and also create merit. So it creates an auspicious condition to complete the translation. and also to complete, for the reader, to complete the reading and contemplating of the sutra. But then the second reason they put that obeisance is to identify which of the Tripitaka, which of the three baskets it belongs to. So generally, I mean it's not strict, but there's a general tradition that at the beginning of sutras that belong to the Vinaya basket, you prostrate to Shakyamuni Buddha, because he's the one who directly explained the Vinaya. Sutras that belong to the Abhidharma basket, I think you prostrate to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, or all the hearers and Bodhisattvas of Buddha. And then at the beginning of the Sutra basket, sutras belong to the Sutra basket, you prostrate to Manjushri. So this doesn't have, this is a prostration to the victorious perfection of wisdom. I guess probably indicating that it's part of a perfection of wisdom sutras. But it belongs to the Vinaya, not the Vinaya. Vinaya basket, because the three baskets, they correlate with the three higher trainings. So Vinaya basket correlates with the higher training of pure morality. Then the Sutra basket accords with the higher training of concentration. And the Abhidharma basket accords with the higher training of wisdom. Yeah, quite sure. So, yeah, actually this belongs to the Abhidharma basket. Yeah. Alright, so then there's the prologue.
Sorry, the first basket.
The first basket is the Vinaya basket, and it correlates with the higher training of morality, pure morality.
Did that?
Higher training of pure morality. There's three higher trainings: pure morality, concentration, and wisdom. So they accord with the three baskets. Okay, so that's the title, the obeisance, and then there's the prologue. So this is all before the actual body of the sutra. So in the prologue, there's a common prologue and an uncommon prologue. So the common prologue is from here. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagawan was abiding on the pile of Vulture's Peak in Rajgriha, together with a great sangha of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. So that is the common prologue. And that's just setting the scene. It's also called like the Lengshi. The Lengshi means like especially in the Vinaya sutras, for each of the different vows, there's called a Lengshi. In Tibet, it's Lengshi. It means basically it's like kind of like an introduction. It's difficult to translate. It's kind of like an introduction. It's kind of like a background or setting the scene. But basically, it tells you the place and the people who were involved in that sutra first coming about, being presented. So here, the place is Rajgriha, Vulture's Peak in Rajgriha. And then the person is the Bhagawan, the Buddha, and then the disciples, a great sangha of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. So that's the common prologue. And then is the uncommon prologue. At that time, the transcendent victor was absorbed in a samadhi on the categories of phenomena called profound perception of the profound. Also at that time, the bodhisattva, the mahasattva, the superior Avalokiteshvara, was observing the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and saw that those five aggregates are also empty. Those five aggregates also are empty of inherent existence. So that is the uncommon prologue. Yeah, I think the reason it's called uncommon is the uncommon prologue. It's something that anybody could see. You know, anybody could see that the Buddha is there, and there's all these other monks and bodhisattvas there. And then the uncommon prologue is something uncommon about what the mind of the Buddha and the mind of Avalokiteshvara, that you could only know if you have access to their minds, that they're absorbed in these two concentrations. So it's uncommon. Okay, so then after that is the the actual body of the sutra. So this begins with a question asked by Shariputra. Then by the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the Buddha, to the Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva, the superior Avalokiteshvara, How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the profound perfection of wisdom? Okay, so that's the question by Shariputra. What's that? Is that question? I think the question is probably also asked by the blessing, by the power of the Buddha, isn't it?
Then through the power of the Buddha. Then by the power of Buddha.
Oh yeah, of course it says that, right? So that's an expression. So that's from there is an example of speech through the Buddha's blessing, through the blessing, or the Buddha's word through the Buddha's blessing. Remember, at the very end of the commentary, he describes different kinds of the Buddha's speech or the word of the Buddha. So the very words at the very beginning of the sutra, "Thus did I hear," are words. I want to use the phrase exactly. They added the words added with the permission of the Buddha. Right? So the Buddha gave permission, or the Buddha gave instruction, is another way to add those words. Thus did I hear at one time. And also at the end of the sutra, the words.
Well said, well.
The transcendent victor said like this. The transcendent victor, having said this, and so forth, those words that are added at the end of the sutra, they're also words. I mean, they're also considered the words of the Buddha. So thus did I hear at one time, and then the last paragraph of the sutra, it's also considered the word of the Buddha, but it's also, of course, it's not words he spoke from his mouth, and it's not words he spoke by the power of his blessing in this way, but it's words that he gave instruction that those words be added. So therefore it becomes the word of the Buddha in that way. And then, so this question of Shariputra, where he says, how should any son of lineage train who wishes to practice the profound perfection of wisdom? Of course, those words are spoken from Shariputra's mouth, as are the words of Avalokiteshvara later, which is almost the whole body of the sutra. But all of that is actually considered the word of the Buddha, because it's spoken through the power of the Buddha's blessing. So that's the question of Shariputra. And then below that is the answer by Avalokiteshvara. So that is really what takes up most of the sutra, is Avalokiteshvara's answer. Okay. So then we're in the middle of the second paragraph, where it says, he said this, and the Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva, the superior Avalokiteshvara, said this to Venerable Shadadvatiputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage, who wishes to practice the profound perfection of wisdom, should view it in this way. They should correctly view those five aggregates also as empty of inherent existence. So that's the short answer. So first, Avalokiteshvara answers Shariputra's question just shortly, in a brief way, and then he answers it in an extended way. Yes?
Since Manjushri symbolizes the Bodhisattva of wisdom, why is Avalokiteshvara, who is equated with compassion, respond to this, or why is this sutra a dialogue between Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara and not between Manjushri and Shariputra?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I don't know, actually. I don't know the answer. So maybe Manjushri was not there at this time. Maybe he was somewhere else, and Avalokiteshvara just happened to be there, or I don't know. But it's a good question. But if you have an opportunity to ask someone wiser and more educated than me, then it would be a good question to ask. Like Lama Zopa Rinpoche or something. So keep a question in mind. But yeah, I'm not sure. You'll find if you look at the other Perfection of Wisdom sutras, like there's the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra in 8,000 verses, or 20,000 verses, or 100,000 verses, or even like we often read here the Diamond Cutter Sutra. There's all different people. There's all different characters that appear and go away. Sometimes Manjushri is there, but oftentimes, like in the Diamond Cutter Sutra, the one explaining emptiness aloud is Subhuti. This is monk Subhuti, who's an arhat. And then, yeah, in other sutras, like we read the Golden Light Sutra or the Sangata Sutra, there's different speakers at different times. Just because someone is explaining emptiness, it's not always Buddha himself or Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom. But it's another interesting question. Well, how is it that Manjushri came to be associated with wisdom, and Avalokiteshvara came to be associated with compassion? Right? Why? There's a story. I mean, there's a story behind each. The one Avalokiteshvara I know a little better. Manjushri I don't know. But yeah. So in short, I don't really know. Okay, so that's the short answer up to there. And then there's a longer answer begins, right? So that this is the most famous lines of the Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is not other than, emptiness is not other than form. Form is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. So, according to, so then I want to look at, well, I'll explain those words, but I want to look at, because one of the main things I want to do as we go through the sutra here is point out, well, what are the different main sections of the sutra, and especially within the main body of the sutra. So we've gone through the title, the obeisance, the prologue, which has a common, uncommon, and then the question, and then we're on the answer, which is really the main part of the sutra. So within the answer, there's different parts of the answer are associated first with the 5 paths, right? The path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, meditation, and no more learning. So there's Tendar Larampa. I'll mainly stick to Tendar Larampa's way of dividing it up, but you should know that in a different commentary by, let's see if he mentions at the end. I think it's Jamyangawa Lodro. He divides up a slightly different way. Because there's several other sutra, there are several other commentaries on the sutra. I'm not sure which ones are translated and which are not. But I was looking at, there's a very good commentary, this book by Geshe Sonam Rinpoche, which I know Namjong's been using and referencing, and I was also just reading it this morning. But he mentions, because he looks at the different commentaries to see. But according to Tendar Larampa's commentary, then from this section of, well, probably, let's see, what does he say? Because I made notes on here. Where does he start? What's the section that, the first words that are related to the path of accumulation and preparation are... Oh, does it have that? Oh, great, I didn't even see that. So that's at the end of the book, right? Oh, yeah, great. Okay. The common prologue, uncommon prologue, Shariputra's question. Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. Okay, so let's look at that chart at the end. This chart, towards the end of the book, it's about, how many pages from the very end? It's about 10 pages from the very end. I'll find this chart. I'll just read you this chart instead. Yeah, there. That, yeah. Just flip back. At the beginning. Okay, everyone found the chart? This chart with the Heart Sutra divided up according to sections. Okay, so gone through the title, the common prologue, the uncommon prologue, the question, and the actual sutra. So then Shariputra's question, and then Avalokiteshvara answered. So then, yeah, so then the lines I just read. Form is empty. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. So according to Tendar Larampa, you see? Look at them. Just flip back. Yeah. But you're at the end. That's the very end of the sutra. Just flip back one page.
This
Yeah,
one.
there. Okay. So it says that most famous couple lines, form is empty, and so forth, are associated with the paths of accumulation and preparation. So that's according to the first two paths, the paths of accumulation and preparation. And then the next lines, Shariputra, likewise all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Those are associated with the path of seeing. And then from there down, Shariputra, therefore, and emptiness, and so forth, is associated with the path of meditation. But according to this other commentary, I think it's Jamyang Gawa Lodro's commentary, he actually has actually the first part of Avalokiteshvara's answer, beginning with he said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this. That is that's associated with the paths of accumulation and preparation. And then form is empty, emptiness and form, and so forth, is associated with the path of seeing. And actually the whole main part of the explanation is associated with the path of seeing. And then only at the very end, when where it says, go to the next page, where it says, it's in the second paragraph on the back side, where it says Vajra-like samadhi at the end of the path of meditation. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on dwelling in perfection of wisdom. So he says, in this other commentary, he says that's where the path of meditation begins. I know, that's just so you know. You don't really have to know all that, but just know what Tendra Rampa, his presentation, but know that there's other ways of interpreting. But it doesn't really matter in the end. I mean, which strictly speaking, like which are associated with which. It's not something that the Buddha expressly taught. And anyway, the main thing is to know that, especially on the basis of the mantra that comes at the end, that he is also, the Avalokiteshvara's answer is also indicating that, well, the main thing to be meditated on during the 5 paths is emptiness, right? And so it's different ways of meditating on emptiness that are progressively more powerful is the ways that we move through the 5 paths. Okay. So again, I want to explain today, just briefly, this form is empty, emptiness is form, and so forth, and then the mantra at the end. Because those are the two most, even if you can't memorize the whole sutra, if you can just memorize the mantra and know what it means, and also memorize these lines and know what they mean, that's like, they contain the essence of the whole meaning of the sutra. Okay. So form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. Basically, it's saying that emptiness and form, when it's talking about emptiness, it's not talking about just emptiness in general or emptiness of anything. It's talking about the emptiness which is a property of form, which is a characteristic of form. Just like if I say like, if we say that like, well, it's not that emptiness in general is, because basically what it's saying here is there's form, which is the aggregate of form. So if we think about the aggregate of form, we think about like our 5 aggregates. It's talking about our 5 aggregates, our aggregate of form, which means our body, right? So our body, so think about your own body. If we say that one's own body is one nature with emptiness, like the emptiness, if we were just thinking emptiness in general, it doesn't really make so much sense. It's not really very significant. But it's like, but if we say that one's own body is one nature with the emptiness, which is a property of one's own body, then it makes a lot more sense. It's kind of like, what the emptiness is being talked about here is that emptiness which is a quality or a property of or a quality of one's own 5 aggregates, beginning with one's own body. So the difference is, and what it's saying essentially is that the form aggregate and its property of emptiness are one nature. They're inextricable. They're one nature but different isolates. Right? This is a very important phrase. One nature, different isolates.
One entity
or one entity? Yeah, one entity, different isolates. And this relationship comes up again and again and again. So I won't explain too much detail because we explained it before, but like an example of that is one entity, different isolates. Like your body has, our body has different properties. For example, like the color of our body. Like the color of our body is not our body, right? But it's a property of our body, it's a quality of our body. So it's one entity with our body. Or the weight. We have our body has a weight or a volume, a mass. So the weight of our body is one property of our body. And you can't find the weight of our body as something separate entity from our body. It doesn't make any sense. They only exist as two interrelated things. And also, you can't have, like, our body can't exist without having weight, right? Without having any. Well, actually, that's a little difficult because you could go into space and not have weight. We could say our body can't exist without having volume. That's for sure. Volume. Mass, yeah, volume or mass. Yeah, so like the volume of our body, it is inextricably like part of our body. You can't separate the volume from the body, and you can't separate our body from its volume, you know, or the color, or the smell, or the texture. All of those things are inherently like part of our body. So and that's different from saying like volume in general is one entity with our body. Right? So saying the volume of our body is one entity with our body is much more specific. That's different from saying volume in general, this abstract thing, is one entity with our body. So here it's not talking about, when it says form is empty, emptiness is form, it's not talking about the emptiness is form. It's not talking about emptiness in general, it's talking about the emptiness which is a property of your body. Right? So and also the we can't take literally. Like form is empty. That we can take literally. It means form, our physical aggregate, is empty of inherent existence. It doesn't have any existence independently on its own, from its own side, through its own power. Rather, it exists independent upon a whole network of causes and conditions, independence upon many parts, and especially independence upon our mind, which imputes form aggregate, or imputes form or body to that collection of parts. It exists independence upon that act of mental imputation or labeling by the mind. Right? So for those reasons, then it is empty of inherent existence. That we can take very literally. Form is empty. But then, I mean, emptiness is form is much more difficult, right? You can't take that literally at face value, because the property of the body being empty of inherent existence is not form. If it was form, we would be able to see it, feel it, taste it, touch it. It would be an object of our sense consciousness. But emptiness, which is a property of the body, is not an object of our sense consciousness. It's only an object of our mental consciousness. So what it means is, actually, the way we have to understand the words is to say that here it's talking about one entity, right? So in the first line, form is empty, just means form, the physical aggregate, is empty of inherent existence. And then the second line is saying that emptiness of inherent existence is one entity with that form. It's not like it's something different, unrelated. It is one entity with form, with that physical aggregate. Right? That's what it means when it says emptiness is form. Not that literally emptiness is form, but emptiness is one entity with form. And so one reason for saying that is because there's a common tendency, you know, when we've studied and meditate on emptiness, to think, because we have such a strong tendency to grasp at something as being inherently existent. Because to say, I mean, that's why, well, I mean, the Buddha didn't teach that everything is empty of inherent existence in the first turning the wheel of Dharma. In the Pali Canon, he doesn't teach that, not explicitly, just very, very subtly. And also in the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, he doesn't teach that everything is empty of inherent existence, because most of us, most sentient beings, we have a very strong tendency to grasp on something, that something exists like solidly, real. Not solidly, but something exists as like a final basis. Like when you look down to see, well, what is the basis for reality?
Something which is tangible.
Something which is tangible, something we can hang on to say, this is real. Like this doesn't have parts, this doesn't have any conditions, this is ultimate, this is final, this is real. We want to grasp on to something as existing in that way. It's kind of like when you dig down, and you take away the parts, you want to find that there's something at the bottom that you can hold on to. Or if you're swimming in the ocean, like if there's something you can hold on to, you feel safe. Right? If there's nothing you can hold on to at all, like I always associate this with when I was young and I went out. I mean, it's still the case now. If you go out on a boat in the middle of the ocean or in a big lake where the nearest land is very far away, and you jump off the boat into the water and just go swimming in the water. Like, it's very scary. Like, it's very scary to get away from the boat. As long as you're within reach of the boat and you can hold on to something, you feel like, okay. But just to go a few meters away from the boat, you know you can swim back. But it's a very scary feeling not to have anything to hold on to in this vast, like, open area. So I think for most of us it's similar. When you think about, if there's nothing that has this tangible, solid, real, like fundamental existence that we can grab onto, then it's very scary, right? So for the reason that relates here is because the Buddha says form is empty. So he says first, okay, form is empty of inherent existence. But then many people, they tend to grasp onto that very profound truth, empty of inherent existence, emptiness, as the real thing, as being real, as something that we can grab on and say, oh, this is the true nature of reality, which is unchanging and doesn't depend upon conditions and causes, and doesn't depend on parts. It's the final kind of solid, real thing. We grasp on that truth as being the real thing. So the way to destroy that grasping is to point out that emptiness also is a dependent arising. It also doesn't have its own independent, real existence. So how does he point that out? By saying, emptiness is form, meaning emptiness is one nature with form, meaning that emptiness itself depends upon form. If the form doesn't exist, then its emptiness of inherent existence, it also can't exist. So they are mutually dependent, right? So the form, for its existence, it depends upon having parts, it depends upon having causes and conditions. Therefore, there's nothing you can point to and say, this is the real form that exists independently through its own power. So, therefore, the form is empty of inherent existence. But that profound property of form, that it's empty of inherent existence, that depends on there being, it's called the dongxi, the basis of emptiness. In Tibetan, it's dongxi. It means the basis of emptiness. It means, so what it means is, just like our body has weight or mass or volume, so the weight or mass or volume of our body, they depend for their existence on our body, on our having a body. If our body didn't exist, those properties of our body couldn't exist. And when you think about just general volume, that general idea of volume only exists because there are particular instances of volume. There's the volume of this bowl, the volume of the table, the volume of my body. So you can't find volume, this general class, without reference to particular instances, right? So it's the same with emptiness. Any emptiness, the general thing, emptiness, okay, it exists, but it exists as a classification for all the specific instances of emptiness. If you're really going to realize emptiness, you have to realize emptiness on the basis of something. Like you realize the emptiness of, your body's emptiness of inherent existence, your mind's emptiness of inherent existence, the emptiness of inherent existence of, a pillar or a pot or whatever. But you realize emptiness of inherent existence of something, because that's the only way that any instance of emptiness really exists, right? So, so any instance of emptiness, it has to have a basis which is a property of that basis. Right? So here it's talking about the emptiness of inherent existence of our body, and the basis of that is our body. Right? It's our body that's empty of inherent existence. Just like the basis, there's weight or volume in general, but then you can only, to really understand that, you need to think about in terms of specific instances of weight and volume. You know, like if a teacher is explaining what volume is in the classroom in school, they'll explain volume, but then you don't really understand it until you go and you take things and submerge them in water or whatever and to learn the volume. It's by experimenting with different instances of weight and volume that you learn what that really means, and that's a class. So just like to really understand emptiness, you have to look at different real instances of emptiness. And each of those instances of emptiness, they have a base. Just like any instance of volume has a base. Like there's a volume of this mallet. It's a property of this mallet. So it's the basis for it existing is this mallet. The volume of the basis for our body's volume is our body. Similarly, the basis for our body being empty of inherent existence is our body. Right? And that property and the basis are one entity. Right? So that's what this means. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. So it means emptiness is one entity with form. Emptiness is not other than form. So it's just restating what it stated in the second line. Emptiness is not other than form means emptiness is not some other empty entity from form. It's not a separate entity from form. So we're talking about the emptiness, our body's emptiness of inherent existence. He's saying it exists interdependently, independence upon the form aggregate. As one entity with the form aggregate, it doesn't exist separate from it. Right? It doesn't exist independently from the form aggregate, or as a separate entity from the form aggregate. And then finally, form is also not other than emptiness. Right? So that form also, it exists as one entity with emptiness, with its emptiness, and as independence upon its emptiness of inherent existence. So the form aggregate and its emptiness of inherent existence, they each depend upon each other. They're both one entity with each other, and they both depend upon each other for their existence. And you can't have one without the other. Right? They're like, sometimes it's described like two sticks leaning together. You know, two sticks. If you lean them together, they can't stay up like that without the other one. They mutually depend upon each other. Either one's not there, then they fall down. Right? So the form aggregate and its emptiness of inherent existence, they exist like that. They mutually depend upon each other. And everything in the world is like that. Right? Everything. There's nothing in the world that's not like that. Okay. So form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. So just to read that in a very short way with the meaning would be, okay, form is empty of inherent existence. That emptiness of inherent existence is one entity with form. That emptiness of inherent existence is not a separate entity from form, or is not an other entity from form. And form is also not other than emptiness, or doesn't exist independently from emptiness. In the same way, feeling, so our feeling aggregate, our discrimination aggregate, our compositional factors, which is all our karma and karmic imprints and all the other mental factors, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty of inherent existence. Okay. So according to Tendra Larampa, that is that section, that paragraph, is associated with the paths of accumulation and preparation. Okay. And then the next line, 2 lines, are associated with the path of seeing. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness. Yeah, so it means when he says they are emptiness, he means they're empty of inherent existence. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. So whenever he's negating all the negations, and then below no form, no feeling, and so forth, all the negations in this sutra, they all are negation of inherent existence. So we know that because look at the last line of the uncommon prologue above. Above the uncommon prologue, the last line said, "Behold those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature." Right? So that, behold those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature, then that indicates what is, whenever he speaks about something being empty of something or something not existing, it always refers to that, being empty of inherent nature. So that phrase we have to apply again and again below. So here when it says without characteristic, it means empty of it, having characteristics that have an inherent nature. Right? Unproduced means not inherently produced, not inherently unceased, not inherently stainless, not inherently without stain, not inherently deficient, not inherently fulfilled, right? Because there's no inherent existence. So that's the section on the path of seeing. And then there's a big section on the path of meditation. Shariputra, therefore in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. So that is the 5 objects. Right? The form, feeling. So the first 5 are objects of the sense consciousness. Oh no, sorry. No, that's the 5 aggregates again. In emptiness there is no form, feeling, no discrimination, no composition, factors, no consciousness. So that's the 5 aggregates again, just as mentioned above. But the way he speaks about them is a little different. Like above he's saying form is empty, and then the other 5 aggregates, they're empty, emptiness is those, and so forth. And then they don't have these, they're not characters, without characters, unproduced, unceased, and so forth. And then he says, Shariputra, therefore in emptiness there is no form, no feeling. Right? So it's a little different. In emptiness there is no form, no feeling. So there's a little different way of talking about them here. In emptiness means, what he means is, most of the scholars, commentators say that what it means is, you imagine if the yogi, the practitioner or yogi, when they're meditating on emptiness, then on the level of the path of accumulation and path of preparation, they have a conceptual understanding of emptiness. Right? So to that conceptual understanding of emptiness, then things which are not the emptiness, things which are not the ultimate truth, they appear. For example, the meaning generality of emptiness and the basis of emptiness, and so forth. Things which are conventional truths, they also appear. But then, from the path of seeing, the meditator, they generate a direct perception of emptiness. Yeah, a direct perception of emptiness, which means it's a non-conceptual perception of emptiness. So to that mind absorbed in meditation on emptiness, which is non-conceptual, which directly perceives emptiness, in the face of that mind, emptiness, nothing appears, actually. In the face of that mind, there's nothing, the object of the mind is emptiness, and it realizes emptiness. But there's no conventional phenomena appear. No conventional truth appears. So the meaning generality of emptiness doesn't appear. The basis, like if we're meditating on the emptiness of the form aggregate, the basis of that emptiness, which being the form aggregate itself, that doesn't appear. So nothing except the ultimate truth, emptiness itself, appears to that mind, right? So that's what it means when it says here, therefore in emptiness there is no form. It means in the face of that mind, directly realizing emptiness, form doesn't exist. There is no form. There's no feeling, no compositional factors, no emptiness. So it's not saying that, it doesn't mean, of course, that those things don't exist at all, that form doesn't exist, feelings don't exist. Because in general those things exist. Basically what it means is those things don't inherently exist. But a different way of saying that is that those things don't exist in the mind of the meditative absorption on emptiness. The meditative absorption which directly perceives emptiness. In the face of that mind, those don't exist. Because whatever exists in the face of that mind means in front of that mind, or in the eye of that mind, another way to say it, is that whatever exists in the eye of that mind is or in the face of that mind is has to be truly existent, right? Because that mind is analyzing to see what is it that truly exists. Is there anything that has inherent existence? Is there anything that has independent, true existence? And so what it finds is that no, there isn't. There's nothing, right? And so all that appears is that absence of inherent existence, which is emptiness. So if there's anything that appears at that time, then that means that thing has to be inherently existent, because that's what he's looking for. Looking to see, is there anything that has inherent existence? Then if form is appearing at that time, then form would have to have inherent existence, right? But it doesn't. So on the one hand, saying that in the face of the, or in front of, or there's that something doesn't appear to the mind directly perceiving emptiness is another way of saying that something is empty of inherent existence. Right? That is the same meaning, one meaning. Do you have a question?
An object without appearance?
An object without appearance? No, every object that exists appears. That appears to some consciousness.
No, I mean, this is the name of this experience when nothing appears.
Objectless.
An object without appearance. I don't know, probably it's a translation from Tibetan.
Probably an object without appearance.
Yeah, this is...
It doesn't register. There's a space-like, it's also called space-like meditation on emptiness. Space-like meditation. Nothing appears.
Venerable Namjoga mentioned that the very title of the sutra means it's the perfection of the wisdom. Heart Sutra would include bodhicitta plus emptiness, knowledge of emptiness. So the wisdom part is the emptiness, and the perfection comes by conjoining it with bodhicitta.
Yes.
Now, while we are reading this, I find it difficult, except that Avalokiteshvara himself is the embodiment of compassion, bodhicitta. The lines do not express bodhicitta anywhere.
No, that's true. They don't. And bodhicitta is only implicitly expressed, not explicitly. But you have to think, well, how is bodhicitta indicated here? Is because, well, why is the Buddha giving this teaching at all? The reason he's given the teaching is because the cause of sentient being suffering is ignorance, grasping at inherent existence. So it's out of great compassion, with the wish to free sentient beings from suffering, that is teaching about this. Yeah.
But where is the bodhicitta part of it?
That's what I'm saying. It's not. It's only implied. Yeah. Well, like I said, it's in the title, the perfection of wisdom. The perfection indicates that, because the 6 perfections are practices of bodhisattvas. So to be one of any of the 6 perfections as the perfection of wisdom, it has to be conjoined with bodhicitta. So it's just implied in the title that it's. And I mean also when Shariputra asked the question, how should any bodhisattva train who wishes to practice the profound perfection of wisdom? Of course, there it's a bodhisattva is someone who has bodhicitta. So he's just implying, well, for a person who has bodhicitta, they have this desire to become enlightened in order to free all sentient beings from suffering. Well, what kind of practice should they actually engage in? And then Avalokiteshvara replies, well, they should meditate on emptiness like this. So in the fact that Shariputra is asking, like, how should bodhisattvas train, implies that it's, of course, a bodhisattva's training is conjoined with bodhicitta.
But the emphasis of the sutra is mainly on emptiness.
Yes, that's
the
true.
realization of emptiness,
Yeah.
and the emphasis on wisdom realizing emptiness.
Yes.
So, I mean, when something is implied, it becomes very difficult because you can imply any number of things, but somewhere it has to be made explicit.
Yeah, it is. In other sutras would emphasize bodhicitta, and they don't say much about emptiness. This sutra explains more about emptiness. So if you want to know more about bodhicitta, you read more of other sutras that speak more explicitly on bodhicitta. Okay. So then, so I was explaining this last two lines on this page. Shariputra, therefore in emptiness, there is no form. So there's two, in short, there's two ways to read it. One is, therefore, Shariputra, therefore, in the sphere of things being empty of inherent existence, in emptiness, there is no inherently existent form, no inherent existent feeling, and so forth. One way to read it. And then another way to read it is, Shariputra, therefore, in the face of the meditative absorption, directly perceiving emptiness, there is no form, there is no feeling, no discrimination of compositional factors, and so forth. Why? Because those things don't have inherent existence. It's the same thing. Okay. And then, so the first is the five aggregates, and then no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form. So no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. Those are the five objects. And then no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. Those are the five objects also. So what is the difference between those? There's two different classifications. Look at this chart.
They are 6 each, 6 into 3.
Yeah, but why are they list those two differently? Because they have different names. I think it's called, the second's called the 12 sources. The first is called, there's the 6 constituents. Form, source, source, no source. Who's in the actors? Anyway, in short, it's talking about all phenomena. It's just dividing them up. Anyway, no eye, no ears, no tongue, no visual form. Sorry. No eye, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, mind. So that's referring to the 6. The parts of the body, right? No eye, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. Those are all parts of the aggregate, the body or mind. And then the no visual form. So that also includes that. It's no object of eye, sense, consciousness. Nothing you can see, right? No visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. So that's the 6 objects, right? No visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. The 6th one, no phenomena, includes all, and it includes everything that exists. No phenomena. That's why all things that exist are included in those 6 objects. And then, then there's the 6 sense. The 5 sense powers and the mental sense power. So here they're called elements. There is no eye element. So eye element, what is the eye element? So there's the eye. Basically it's like, in order to generate a consciousness seeing something, right? In order to generate an eye sense consciousness that sees something, we first have to have the organ, the eye, and then you have to have, and then within the organ, the eye, you have to have what's called the eye element here, which means the power within the eye, which has the ability to see something, right? Because just because you have an eye doesn't mean you can see with that eye. Many eyes are deficient, right? Or it could, it could be damaged. So that's not like the eyeball is damaged, but especially there's some specific things like cells or molecules or, Buddhism though is not conceptualized as like a gross physical thing, but a very subtle physical form. It's like that exists within the eye that enables you to see. It was the same with the ears, nose, tongue, and the body. So there has to be the eye organ, and then the eye sense power, or in this case called the eye element, and then that comes in contact with an object, a visual form, and then based on the meeting of those, then you generate consciousness, eye sense consciousness, right? So that's why it's mentioning these. So first he mentions the organs, that no eye, ears, nose, tongue, etc. And then no visual form, no visual sound, and etc. Those are the objects. And then there is no eye element, so that's this power in the eye, and so on up to including no mind element. Right? So there's the power in the eye, ear, nose, tongue. Those are the 5 sense powers. And then the mind element is actually the preceding moment of consciousness. That's what gives, each moment of consciousness, what gives it its uncommon ability to experience any phenomena is the preceding moment of consciousness. Like what gives our eye the uncommon ability to see things, but not hear things, not smell. Like can we hear things with our eye? Or smell things with our eye? So Buddha wants to debate. But generally no. For an ordinary person, no, you can't hear things with your eye or smell things with your eye. But why is that? Because the eye sense power, it gives us the ability to see things but not to hear things. The ear sense power, it gives us the ear an ability, or us an ability to hear things with the ear but not to see things or to taste things with the ear. Right? So the same with the mind sense power. What is it that this present moment of mental consciousness, what is it that gives it the ability to know or perceive anything? It's not the eye sense power, not the ear sense power, it's actually the previous moment of consciousness. Right? That is here it's called the mind element, it's also called the mind sense power, actually. Yeah.
So it's the one which detects what is happening in the body.
What?
The mind element.
No. It's just the previous moment of consciousness. Like now, say you have a thought consciousness thinking, like, it's hot. So what is, and that perceives hot. That perceives the temperature in the room, right? That mental consciousness. First there's a body consciousness that perceives the temperature. And then the mind sense consciousness also has a thought about that. So it also has that temperature as an object. But what is it that gives that? So as in the body sense consciousness, what it gives it the ability to perceive like temperature and texture is this, it's like a physical kind of entity, a force in the body that we can, I can touch this and feel that it's smooth. But then the mind that thinks about that, what gives that mind its ability to perceive and know like the temperature of that object? It's not anything physical, it's the previous moment of mind that gave rise to it. That's what I'm saying. Yesterday I was talking about the immediately preceding condition. That is always when we talk about the mental element, we're talking about the immediately preceding, the mental element of any, or the mental sense power of any moment of mental consciousness. So that's only the case for mental consciousness, not the sense consciousness. So the immediately preceding condition of any mental consciousness is that consciousness is, in general, there are some exceptions, but mainly it's that one. Is that consciousness's mental sense power. So he says, I element and so on up to including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. So there's mind and the mental consciousness element. Yeah, so the mind element is the sense power, and then the mental, up to including no mental consciousness element. So that includes the eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, body consciousness, I missed one, eye, ear, nose, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mental consciousness. So there's 6 consciousness, right? Basically you have to know here, there's this division of the 18 constituents, right? So there's the 6 objects, visual form, what's called sound, odor, taste, object of touch, and phenomena, the 6. Then there's the 6, here they're called elements, or they're also called sense consciousness. So the eye element, ear, nose, tongue, body element, and then the mind element. So based on the meeting of those, then you have the 6 consciousnesses. Eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mental consciousness. Okay? That's important. Those are the 18 constituents, which there's a chart of in the back here. But yeah, I will, in order to save time, we won't look at the chart. You can look on your own. Okay. And then, so just to finish off the path of meditation, so then the next paragraph says, Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely and dwell in the perfection of wisdom. So according to Tendra, this is talking about the Vajra-like samadhi. At the end of the POM means path of meditation. So at the end of the path of meditation, it's called the Vajra-like Samadhi. So what it means is it's the last meditative absorption the meditator goes into before totally eliminating all the obscurations and achieving full enlightenment. So that line is referring to that. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, so it means, and again, there's no inherently existent attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom. And then the next line, the next half of that line, the mind without obscuration and without fear, having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. That talks about no more learning. Because it's talking about the bodhisattvas reaching the end point of nirvana. So the end point of nirvana means they achieve nirvana. Means there's no higher state to go to. And then this is the precepts for practice. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment and reliance on the perfection of wisdom. So independence upon this way of meditating on emptiness. That's how all the Buddhas of the 3 times, means all the Buddhas of the past, all the Buddhas of the present, all the Buddhas of the future, past, present, and future. All the Buddhas of the past, present, and future also achieve enlightenment like this, meditating like this. And then there's the mantra. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Maybe I'll come back and finish explaining that after the break. Let's take a break now for 10 minutes of tea. So there's tea and snacks over here. Please enjoy. How long did it take you all to memorize the Heart Sutra? You memorized the Heart Sutra?
Quite a long time. And Lamjongla said that he gave us the hint was to start backwards.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was very good, you know.
Yeah? Okay.
From the last line you start backwards.
Okay.
But it was very effective.
Okay. How long did it take you?
I think
I didn't do it backwards. I did
one and a half months or something.
1.5 months.
I did it top down because it's very logical.
Yeah.
Every paragraph starts off from where the previous paragraph left off.
Right.
So I've just been doing it that way.
Okay.
It took me maybe 4 weeks.
4 weeks. Okay.
And I did I recited every day.
I recited 3 times a day.
You also
I like you when I'm going for a walk.
You recited?
Yeah.
I recited every day.
Archana, how long did it take?
Huh?
I think it took me 3-4 iterations. I didn't do it on consecutive days.
Okay.
But
Okay.
probably because I've been reciting it before.
Yeah, another technique to memorize is like, before you actually
Previous Buddha.
try to just be able to recite it from memory, even any lines, just recite the whole thing again and again, reading it. Just read the whole thing again and again and again until you can read very fast, almost without looking at the words very much. And then you memorize it, and it's very easy to memorize.
Oh.
That would take long.
I don't know, it depends.
You do a couple of paragraphs at a time.
Yeah.
Maybe every 5th or 6th day, you start off in another couple of paragraphs.
Like you said, each line, if you can recite it 5 times without looking at the text and looking, you will know it. That's true, actually. That's how
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah, but then you have to be able to do the same thing in the evening and then the next day.
Yeah.
Did you recite it one? I mean, memorize it?
I have said it only half.
In English? Okay. Oh, it's good. I'm thinking, in the future, if there's a Dalai Lama's teaching, sometimes he'll have people recite the Heart Sutra in different languages. So always when the people recite in English, they're always reading from a paper. They've never memorized it. I always think it's kind of sad a little bit because it's not that difficult to memorize. It just takes a month or so. But it'd be good if people, memorize it. Because in every other language they recite it except Spanish, they've memorized it. Every other language, the people reciting have all memorized it, which is great. But maybe in the future, if there's enough of us from the center, I mean, I've memorized it in English before, but now I don't recite it in English, so I've forgotten it. If there's enough of us from the center memorizing in English, maybe we can we can recite at one Dalai Lama's teachings.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just finish the explanation of the review of the sutra. So at the mantra, on the mantra. So at the beginning of the section on the mantra, which begins with, therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge. So Tendra Dharapa says that this last section on the mantra is for the disciples of sharp faculties, or sharp faculty practitioners. So it means those who they have like sharper intelligence. So it means that with fewer words, they can understand more meaning, right? Whereas the part before, from the beginning of Avalokiteshvara's answer up till here, was an explanation for those of like duller faculties. So duller faculties in the sense that because they need more words, more elaboration, more explanation in order to understand the same amount of meaning. So here, but it's a little strange though here to make the distinction between those of dull faculty and those of sharp faculties. And I haven't had a chance to look at other commentaries to see if they also do that. But it's a little strange though, because here we're all talking well, it comes to, there's several questions that come. First of all, who is the main disciple of the Heart Sutra? When the Buddha inspired Avalokiteshvara to explain this sutra, to teach this sutra, who's the main disciple, ostensibly? Well, yeah, on the one hand, Shariputra is the one who asked the question, right? Shariputra asked the question, and Avalokiteshvara is answering him. So ostensibly the main disciple, the main audience, is Shariputra. But then there's also many other bodhisattvas and other monks all around who are ostensibly listening. So they're also the audience for them, and they're the intended disciple, probably. But there's a lot of discussion in Buddhist commentaries about like how to identify the intended disciple, how to define the intended disciple for different teachings and for different sutras. So, for example, the Ornament of Clear Realization by Maitreya, it said that the intended disciple for that is a bodhisattva who has conceptually realized emptiness but not directly realized emptiness. Right? So the purpose of giving that teaching is to help someone who's already on the bodhisattva path directly realize emptiness and then complete all the paths of the bodhisattva path. So here, there's kind of a question, so Shariputra asked the question at the beginning about how should a bodhisattva practice. So do you think at that point, is Shariputra already a bodhisattva? And so he's already developed bodhicitta, and he's just asking like, well, now what should I do? Now I've developed bodhicitta, I've entered the Mahayana path, then how should I practice? How else should I practice? Or does it seem more like Shariputra is someone who's not on the bodhisattva path? He's just interested in maybe generating bodhicitta, maybe practicing as a bodhisattva, and kind of wanting to know, well, like, okay, if I become a bodhisattva, then what am I supposed to do? How should I practice? How should I train the mind? Or is he something that's neither? He's just kind of a disinterested, like a professor at a university who's just like not interested in practicing. He just wants to know. We'd rather think he's not like that.
Could be he's been inspired by the Buddha to ask the question for the benefit of most people.
Yeah, so that's...
understand paths and how one goes about understanding the different paths.
Yeah, it's definitely the case that he's inspired by the Buddha, because it says
the mantra itself.
It says through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva. But then, so if he's inspired by the Buddha, then it would mean like, well, then maybe he's not even the intended audience for the sutra at all.
No, he's part of the intended audience.
Well,
he's
that's...
the spokesperson of the intended audience.
Yeah, or it could be like that he's the spokesperson. I mean, definitely, why would the Buddha, if the Buddha's, he's meditating on emptiness, and Avalokiteshvara is meditating on emptiness, and then Shariputra's there, who knows what is he doing, maybe he's just picking in the dirt or something like that, or maybe he's meditating on his breath, or who knows, maybe he's meditating on emptiness also, we don't know, right? but Shariputra is there also. And then the Buddha inspires him to ask the question, right? So why would the Buddha inspire him to ask the question? Like, probably like you say, because the Buddha knows there are many people in the audience who are there who would benefit from hearing Avalokiteshvara give this explanation. But it's, I mean, another question is, well, why doesn't the Buddha just, if the Buddha knows that, why doesn't he just explain himself? Why doesn't he just teach?
Or inspire a bodhisattva rather than inspire an arhat.
Yeah, Shariputra is an arhat. So at this point, Shariputra is probably already an arhat.
It's a community of
Definitely.
bodhisattva and community of monks.
Of monks, yeah.
I mean, that total
Yeah.
Why not inspire a bodhisattva who actually would be relevant?
Yeah, why not inspire a bodhisattva to ask the question?
It
Yeah.
will be much more relevant. The question would be much more relevant if it comes from a bodhisattva.
Yeah, because they're a bodhisattva and they want to know how to practice the bodhisattva.
Or maybe this Shariputra needs more blessing than the bodhisattvas. So he gives him the opportunity to do this.
Yeah. Or maybe the Buddha thinks, well, Shariputra is the one who would benefit the most from this explanation. But then again, that still doesn't answer the question. Why doesn't the Buddha just teach this Heart Sutra? Why does he make it so complicated? No?
No, but you said earlier also that there were a lot of sutras where there's Subhuti and there are other people. So most of these sutras seem to be either dialogues between people or something explanatory.
Well, I wouldn't say most, because there are many, many sutras where the Buddha just teaches. I mean, the Buddha sees that giving some explanation to a group of people would benefit. But maybe, I mean, because traditionally the Buddha doesn't give a teaching, and I mean, to this day, monks don't teach the Dharma, or no Buddhist teacher should teach the Dharma unless it's been requested.
Yeah,
Right? The
nobody
Buddha doesn't
asked
teach
the
unless
question.
someone requests for a teaching. Otherwise, it just becomes like preaching to people. So there's a tradition that you don't teach unless it's been requested. So maybe the Buddha saw that, well, if Avalokiteshvara were to give this explanation, it would be very beneficial, but nobody's going to ask. Because, I mean, of course, in the presence of the Buddha, nobody's going to ask Avalokiteshvara to teach anything, right? If they're going to ask anything to be taught, they would ask the Buddha to teach, right? It would be disrespectful to ignore the Buddha and say, oh, Avalokiteshvara, can you teach us how to meditate? How does a bodhisattva practice? It would be a little disrespectful, right? They would ask the Buddha. So the Buddha inspires Shariputra to ask Avalokiteshvara to teach. But why doesn't the Buddha inspire Shariputra to ask him how to teach? I mean, he could have done that. He could have blessed Shariputra to ask the Buddha how does a bodhisattva practice, and then the Buddha would have explained. Like, why doesn't he do that?
The opening lines say that he was himself
In meditation.
on profound perception.
Yeah.
So was Avalokiteshvara.
Yeah, but so was Avalokiteshvara also. Yeah, they both were.
He was also meditating.
Yeah.
He wasn't free.
And just because he's meditating, it doesn't mean he can't arise from his meditation and then teach. He can do that.
Maybe
Because
he
he
saw
got
the
the whole
relevance
thing.
of that meditation for others and therefore taught or set up this dialogue between
Yeah.
Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara.
Yeah. Anyway, these kind of questions we won't find the answer to. Not easy. But they're just interesting things to think about. That help, give more context, more idea of like what is really going on with this sutra. How it's a very interesting sutra in many ways like this also.
Does nobody explain it, Venerable, in any of their commentaries?
I mean, I haven't read all the commentaries, frankly. I'm mostly just relying on Tendra Larapa's commentary, a couple others. So there might be explanation of some other commentaries. I just haven't gotten to them yet. Quite
And
lazy.
also the mantra encapsulates the 5 paths.
That I'm coming to. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So then let's look at the mantra. Therefore, the mantra. Why was I saying this though? There was something else. Because there's the different disciples. Who are the different kinds of disciples of the sutra. So, I was saying, Tendra Lama says there's disciples of duller faculties and disciples of sharper faculties. But in general, I think I mentioned last time I came, when you talk about the different people who are about to enter the Mahayana path, there's a lot of discussion about just the trainees of duller faculties and those of sharper faculties. So the main distinction, the usual way to distinguish the two, is that a trainee of sharper faculties, they're a kind of person who's very, very logical and very kind of, like they don't believe things easily. They don't believe something and they don't agree to do something unless they already can realize that it's possible to do that. So in terms of bodhicitta, for a person of sharper faculties, because bodhicitta is the intention, the aspiration to become fully enlightened in order to free all sentient beings from suffering. So the person of sharper faculty, before they generate that intention or take it as a serious aim, a goal to generate that aspiration, they'll first analyze, well, first of all, is it possible for sentient beings to be free from suffering or not? Because they'll think, if it's not possible for sentient beings to be free from suffering, then there's no point in me generating the aspiration to free all sentient beings from suffering. It would be ridiculous, you know. It's like, is it possible for me, like unassisted by any you know, some people might think, well, I'd love to fly in the sky like a bird, you know, without having to rely on, you know, airplane or hang glider or any other equipment, just my own body to fly like a bird. But so kind of more logical, hard-headed person would be like, well, is that even possible? Because if it's not possible, then there's no point in me trying to generate aspiration to do that and work towards doing that, because it's something I'll never be able to achieve, right? So like that, before generating bodhicitta, the person of sharp faculties, they'll investigate with critical thinking and with analysis to see, is it really possible to free all sentient beings from suffering? Is it really possible for me to become fully enlightened? And only after they've realized that with a valid cognizer, only after they generate valid cognition recognizing that that is possible, will they endeavor to generate bodhicitta. Right? So for that reason, it's said that a person of sharp faculties, before they enter the Mahayana path, they already realize emptiness. Because without realizing emptiness, you can't really have a valid cognizer recognizing that it's possible to be free sentient beings from suffering. Right? But then the person of duller faculties, then they're not someone who's so demanding like that. That's so, they would be someone who's more kind of just goes on faith. Like, you know, they see that the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas are so inspiring, they're such, you know, amazing kind of beings, and they teach that, you know, you should generate bodhicitta and enter the Mahayana path. So then without analyzing further than that, they'll just, based more on just faith and sort of inspiration, they'll just generate bodhicitta without being so skeptical about, well, is it really possible to free sentient beings from suffering and generate full enlightenment? So then they'll just generate bodhicitta that way. But then the question is, so you have these two kinds of disciples. So one of sharp faculty, one of duller faculty, and they both generate bodhicitta, then they both enter the Mahayana path. So they first enter the path of accumulation, right? The path of accumulation, there's three different parts. There's the small, middling, and great path of accumulation. By the time either of them reaches the middling path of accumulation, they have to realize emptiness. It's only on the small. At the very beginning of the path of accumulation, one doesn't have to realize emptiness. Most bodhisattvas do, but some don't, especially the one that goes more on faith. Right? But by the time they've trained in the path of accumulation for a little while, and a little while, yeah, it could be lifetimes. Right? It's not like a few days or a few months or something. Although it could be also. But anyway, by the time they reach like the middle part of the path of accumulation, both of them, they've realized emptiness. They've all realized emptiness. So then the question is there really much difference between them in terms of sharp faculty and dull faculty? Because if they're both bodhisattvas who realize emptiness, then most people tend to say they're both very sharp faculties. To realize emptiness is not easy. So once you've realized emptiness, then it's like they're both considered, just to be a bodhisattva who's realized emptiness, basically you're both become, I mean even the one of dull faculty, they become a person of sharp faculty. Because you can't really say a bodhisattva who's realized emptiness is a person of dull faculties. Right? So then the question is, well, if he's dividing the sutra into the part for that's taught for those of dull faculties and those of sharp faculties, then does that mean that the sutra is really taught more for people who are not bodhisattvas, who have not entered the bodhisattva path and not realized emptiness yet? Or is it teaching more for people who have already realized emptiness but haven't realized it non-conceptually? There's those kind of doubts that come also.
But are you saying that the Bodhisattva can realize emptiness just based on faith and inspiration and not hard work? Like you said, emptiness is difficult to realize.
No, I'm saying they can generate bodhicitta. Based on bodhicitta, they can generate more based on faith and inspiration. And hard work.
Yeah, but emptiness, they can't.
No, well, both of them require a lot of hard work. But emptiness, to realize emptiness requires very logical, rational kind of analysis. Whereas bodhicitta, it doesn't. It's more like just an aspiration that you develop so that it's very strong. That's a difference. Anyway, okay, so let's look at the mantra. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared Tayana Om Gata Gata Paragata Parasamgata Bodhisattva. Shariputra Bodhisattva Mahasabha, the Bodhisattva Mahasabha should train in the profound perfection of wisdom, like that. Okay, so first, before the actual mantra, there's these 5 like praises of the mantra. So it says, therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom. So these 5 praises of the mantra are all correlated with the 5 paths of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and learning. So the mantra of the perfection of wisdom is supposed to be related to the path of accumulation. The mantra of great knowledge is related to the path of preparation. The unsurpassed mantra is related to the path of seeing. The mantra equal to the unequaled is related to the path of meditation. And then the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering is related to the path of no more learning. It should be known as the truth since it is not false. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is declared. So then similarly, so the essential mantra here is Gati Gate, Padagate, Padasangate, Bodhi. Bodhiswaha, Bodhiswaha. But then the Tayata and Om are added on. Remember in Tendar Larampa's commentary, he quotes a text of Nagarjuna, where Nagarjuna says, if you're too tired to recite the entire sutra, just recite the mantra and add on Tayata Om. Right? So Tendar Larampa says, when we recite the mantra, we should always add on this Tayata Om.
It's not Tayata, it's Tadyata.
Tadyata, okay. Tadyata and Om. So Tadyata is the one that's gone. Om is, remember, the sacred syllable that encapsulates, that represents the Buddha's enlightened body, speech, and mind, with the letters it contains within it. O, A, Nu. Om. And then, so Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhiswaha, those that it refers to or corresponds to the 5 paths. So the Gate, the first Gate, to the path of accumulation. The second Gate refers to the path of preparation. Paragate, thoroughly gone beyond. Paragate refers to the path of seeing. So the first Gate, gone means, basically means it's talking about go beyond samsara, the whole thing. Go beyond samsara. So the first Gate, go beyond. Then, go, Gate, go. Paragate, go beyond, means go beyond the conceptual way of understanding emptiness to the non-conceptual way of understanding emptiness, which is what you do when you enter the path of seeing. Remember, the difference between the path of preparation and the path of seeing is on the path of preparation, you have a conceptual understanding of emptiness. When you generate a non-conceptual understanding or a direct perception of emptiness, then you enter the path of seeing. So that's Paragata. Paragata, go beyond. And then Parasamgata, go completely beyond. So that refers to the path of meditation, because it's on the path of meditation that you abandon not only the intellectually acquired obscurations, knowledge, afflictive obscurations and knowledge obscurations, but you also abandon the innately arising obscurations. So you go totally beyond, right? So it means it's the path based on mostly on the path of meditation that you abandon the obscurations and generate the realizations which lead you to going completely beyond the state of being in samsara or even the state of being a sentient being. You go to the state of full enlightenment. So parasanga, go thoroughly beyond. And then bodhiswaha refers to the 5th path, the path of no more learning, or the state of full enlightenment, Bodhi. And then Swa means so be it, may it be thus. So in short it's saying, like based on this meditation on emptiness, by engaging or practicing this wisdom, the perfection of wisdom, realizing emptiness, then may I generate the 5 paths and achieve full enlightenment, which culminate in full enlightenment. And then so then Avalokiteshvara's conclusion of his answer is, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Okay? So that's the conclusion of...
So doesn't that show, Venerable, that this is here for the Bodhisattvas? The
That this
question is, how does the Bodhisattva train? The answer is that the Bodhisattva should train like this. So that's, they are the intended audience.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, generally we can say the intended audience is, well, I don't know, I mean, but you could be teaching even to someone who's not a bodhisattva. But usually, I mean, as a kind of rule of thumb, usually the intended audience for any sutra is beings who have the ability, based on hearing the explanation of that sutra, they have the ability to generate the realizations described by that sutra. Right? So this sutra, it's explaining how to meditate on emptiness, and it's saying in order to meditate on emptiness, you achieve all the 5 paths and then achieve full enlightenment. So generally, so a lot of the specific questions I ask, this doesn't answer still, but generally we can say a person who's the intended disciple of this sutra is someone who, based on hearing this sutra, they could generate the 5 paths of just based on just hearing this sutra alone. Based on just hearing this sutra alone, then they could generate the 5 paths, which result in full enlightenment.
So that's like anybody?
Well, no, not anybody. You know, like we can disclude all the animals, for example.
Yeah.
If you say any human, but even there's many humans that, based on hearing the sutra, it's not going to do anything for them. It's not really going to benefit them. Actually, it's quite specific, kind of.
There is one point which is interesting, which talks about the elimination of suffering.
Yeah.
Which could be used for anybody. I mean, you don't have to be a bodhisattva to do.
No, but it's saying this mantra thoroughly pacifies all suffering. Yeah.
But even otherwise, it says that it eliminates suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, in a general way, of course, that's true.
Venerable, why is that regarded as the no more learning path, which eliminates, which pacifies suffering? Before that, you have the...
Oh, you mean that praise of the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering?
Yeah.
Well, that one's related to the path of no more learning. So I think it's kind of, I mean, all those praises of the mantra, making them correspond to the 5 paths, you have to stretch. It's a little bit of a stretch. Now, it's not like crystal clear. Like the mantra, the sections of the mantra are much more clear. Those praises, it's a little bit of a stretch, but in the commentary, I think it says something like, it's because once you achieve the state of no more learning as a bodhisattva, means you're a Buddha. So what do? You continually engage in activities to eliminate the suffering of all sentient beings. Okay. And you've done that on the base of the mantra. So again, also it's important to recognize that when it says mantra there, it's not talking about just the words that you recite. It's talking about the wisdom which realizes emptiness. So it's that wisdom which realizes emptiness which you meditate on to achieve the state of full enlightenment. And even once you achieve the state of no more learning or the state of full enlightenment, it's based on that wisdom mind that you work to eradicate the suffering of all sentient beings. So that's why I think it's praising the mantra in that way, that thoroughly pacifies all suffering. Should be known as truth. Yes.
That is why it's a Mahayana Sutra.
What?
That's why it's a Mahayana Sutra also.
Yeah, that's also why it's a Mahayana Sutra, because it's,
No, I thought because afflictive obscurations are eliminated on the 8th ground, and cognitive obscurations are still there. So cognitive obscurations are eliminated only on the no more learning path. This is why no suffering.
No. Before the path of no more learning, all the obscurations are abandoned.
Yes, but not before that. I mean, on path of meditation,
Yeah, on the path of meditation, on the
There are-
8th, 9th, 10th grounds.
there are still cognitive obscurations, right?
Yeah.
So
The
that's
eighth,
why no suffering only when all cognitive obscurations are eliminated, only after that.
yeah, you could interpret that way also. That pacifies all suffering.
Yeah.
Or that has pacified all suffering, maybe you could read it that way.
So this works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
pacified.
I think the words are pacifies. It's not that it has pacified all suffering. Because that would make sense also. But I think the words in the Tibetan, it works in the same way, that it thoroughly pacifies all suffering. So that's why I was giving the explanation that not only based on that you eliminate all
Not
the
only
obscurations for yourself, but even once you are on the path of no more learning, it's that wisdom that continues to work to pacify the suffering of others. Yeah. Okay, so let's just read the conclusion paragraph. So, how that was admired by the teacher. So then it's just, basically the Buddha is just reaffirming what Avalokiteshvara has taught and said, yes, that's correct, that's exactly right. That's how all the Buddhas have practiced in the past. So that's how, bodhisattvas should train now. And then all the people present rejoice in the teaching. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. Okay? So,
implicit in this paragraph also is that Avalokiteshvara is referred to as Mahasattva and superior in some way to Shariputra.
yeah, he is.
Therefore, he is requesting him to guide him and
Yeah, he's a bodhisattva. Shariputra is definitely not presented as a bodhisattva here, whereas Avalokiteshvara is. And a Mahasattva, meaning not only a bodhisattva, probably an Arya bodhisattva, a bodhisattva who's directly realized emptiness, who's on a very high level bodhisattva. Okay, so then the well said. The Buddha says well said twice, just as a way of emphasizing, being sincere, emphasizing. It is like that, the same way. And then the conclusion, the Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shakyamuni Buddha, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara says, Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. So ostensibly all those gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, they all also heard the sutra spoken. Right? But that doesn't mean they're all in the audience, they're all people who listen to the sutra, but it doesn't mean they're all intended disciples of the sutra. That's different. Yeah, so are there any final questions? Well, that was it.
the same.
Yes?
But here the words are different. It says the transcendent victor.
Yes, the words here.
Oh yeah. I'm reading this version
Okay.
at the back of the book. Yeah, that's just a translation of the Bhagavan. The conqueror, the transcendent conqueror, I think it's called.
Victor.
Oh, the transcendent victor, transcendent conqueror. Yeah, that's a translation of Bhagavan. Yeah.
So, asuras are demons, right?
Suras and asuras. No, asuras are demigods. There's
Asuras
six beings, 6 migrators in samsara. So of the god realm, there's gods and demigods, or suras and asuras. So asuras are they're like weaker, less powerful gods.
And suras?
The more powerful gods.
Oh.
Usually in the Wheel of Life, which is right above Abhan's head, you can look in the break. They're usually depicted as the gods, the suras, they're above. And they're both in one realm, they're in the god realm. But then the gods, they're always fighting, they're always warring with each other. Because apparently the asuras are always jealous of the gods. And then the gods come and abuse and they steal the attractive people from the demigod realms. So they're depicted as fighting with each other all the time. But they're more and less powerful gods, in short. Kinds of gods. I don't know more about it than that. So.
But the second realm is the highest.
Yeah, there's the God realm, demigod realm, human realm, animals, animal realm, Hungry Ghost realm, and hell realm. Third. Human's third.
Which is the second one?
The demigods. Asuras. Demigods, second.
And the Gandharvas?
Gandharvas, I'm not sure where they fit.
Actually, they're musicians, not Gandharvas.
Yeah, they're the celestial musicians, so they're
Yeah.
probably in the God realm. Probably some. There's all different kinds of gods in the God realm.
Very less powerful.
Very less powerful gods, is it? Okay.
But the translation in Tibetan is a little bit off. Because in Tibetan it's translated as Chisa,
Chisa.
snam eaters.
Is that Gandharvas? I don't know. Is it?
In Tibetan it's translated as Chisa, which in Hindu mythology is
Celestial
born
musicians.
Oh, really? Okay. Because the Bardo beings are also called smell eaters. But they're different, obviously.
The one mentioned here is not how to do this.
No, the one mentioned here is not Bardo beings, for sure.
Translation is a bit off.
In the Tibetan text or in the English text? Oh, because you're saying in the Sanskrit it must be Gandharvas. But in the Tibetan they translate that as Trisa. That's a good point. I haven't looked into that. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, it's good that in the English they use Gandharvas. That's good. Yeah, oftentimes in the English text they use much more Sanskrit than in the Tibetan translations, which in many ways often it's more accurate. It uses Sanskrit.
Gandharvas are usually, I think, in Hindu mythology, less powerful god but very skilled in arts.
In arts and music, I guess.
Music and
Oh, I
arts.
see. Okay. Any questions? Any other questions about the Heart Sutra?
Venerable, that commentary by Dr. Lopez,
Oh, yeah.
it has a
Did you
lot
read
of-
that?
I'm trying to read, but
Do we have a copy at the library?
yeah,
It's very long.
it's very difficult to understand also, and
Uh,
it has several viewpoints. So one of them is like he's quoting from some Maitreya's commentary, saying that there are these three types of form. Where one is imaginary, parikalpita, or something he says. The other is a designated form, and the third is the ultimate form, as in dharmata. So he classifies as three types. Now
what are those?
that is not very common, right? We talk about conventional and ultimate,
Yeah.
and
But
I don't know.
there's different. I mean, according to the 4 different tenet systems,
yeah,
they describe different kinds of form. But according to Prasangika, there is, and also according to the first, what is it? Not Chidamala. Not Chidamala. What is the Vaibhashika? According to Vaibhashika, according to Vaibhashika, I'll explain that first. Vaibhashika, there's the usual kind of form that we can see, hear, taste, touch, smell. That's gross form. And then there's a more subtle kind of form. For example, when you have like upasika vows, right? Like monks' vows. Those vows are form, and they abide in the body. But they don't have shape and color and smell and so forth. But they're a physical thing. So they're a kind of subtle form.
It's also according to Prasangika and
Yeah, Prasangika also has. They call Yikikejikizu. It means like form which is an object of the mental sense consciousness or the mental consciousness. So it means there's also, it's similar. It's a kind of subtle form. So Prasangika also, the vows that the pratimoksha vows we have in our mind stream, according to Prasangika, those are also form. But they're a subtle kind of form that you can't see or hear or taste or touch, and maybe it doesn't even have like its own molecular basis.
Oh,
not substantial.
Not
those are considered
substantial.
as forms, huh? The Pratimoksha vows?
Yeah, form. Okay, so there's different. According to like the Prasangika, which we accept as the highest, it's form. So we accept that the vows are forms. But according to the Sutrayana school and the
Sautrans.
Sautrayana,
Swatantrika.
and Swatantrika and mind only, they're consciousness. It's the mind which refrains from engaging in non-virtuous actions. It's called sungsan. Basically, it's the mind which refrains from breaking the vows. That is the vow, actually. Right? It's like when you take the vow, you make a promise like not to kill. Take a vow not to kill. You make a promise not to kill. It's like actually that mind that is determined, like from now on I'm not going to kill. And then as you go through time, the mind thinking I should not kill, I will not kill, I will not kill. That actually is the vow, according to those. But according to Prasangika, it's actually independence upon the ceremony. You recite the words after the Lama that you're taking the vow. And also, I mean, the mind thinking I will not kill is a cause, but the actual vow abides as a form in the body. It said it abides like the oil in a sesame seed. Like where's the oil in a sesame seed? It's not in any one of the molecules, it pervades the entire thing. Or also an analogy is that the vows abide in our body like a fire in a forest. Like if there's a big forest fire, the fire pervades the entire forest. It's not any of the trees, it's not the leaves, but it pervades the space between those. So it's like that. It's the vows are within the body and they pervade the entire body. But that's an example of according to Prasangika, a form which is an object of the mental consciousness, not of the sense consciousness. Yeah, I mean also another kind of form like that is the eye sense power. I would say the eye sense power, both of them, it's a very subtle form. And even the Sautantrika accept this, that the sense power is a form, they would say it's subtle, but it's a little different. But it's subtle that we can't see it with any of our five consciousness. Okay, any more questions? Let's conclude then with some prayers. Shall we read the King of Sutras? Let's read, the King of Prayers. It's on page 249. We'll make a little extensive dedication of King of Prayers. On page 249. So think about all the merit we've created in this session, starting with positive motivation, going for refuge, offering praises, then reflecting on reading the entire Heart Sutra twice, reflecting on the meaning of different parts of the Heart Sutra, and different questions about the Heart Sutra. And then also and rejoiced in how wonderful it is, how excellent it is. We devote a few hours on our holiday, Sunday morning, to virtuous practice. And then think of all the merit we've created through this entire module on the Heart Sutra, all the sessions from the beginning till now, and the merit created by all the volunteers, all the audience, the benefactors, everybody who's involved in whatever way in making this possible. How wonderful it is. And then think in general of all the merit created by this Dharma Center, Choe Ling, in general from its inception in 2004, so until now, all the virtuous activities, Dharma teachings, meditation retreats, sutra readings, Dharma-related movies, trips to see Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche and other teachers in different places. So all the merit that the center has created, rejoice. And then think, all the center's activities are all possible due to the kindness of our spiritual teachers, especially His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Venerable Counselor Rinpoche, Losang Dele, Counselor Rinpoche Losang, Tsering, and many, many other spiritual teachers who come to the center over the years. So may they all have long. First we rejoice in all of their merits. Oceans of merit they create day and night. And then rejoice in all the merits created by all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the past, present, and future. Especially think about Shakyamuni Buddha and Avalokiteshvara and Shariputra, the merit they created just by being part of the creation of this Heart Sutra. And then the Buddha teaching all the sutras and all the beings who existed at the time of the Buddha, who were causes, acted as causes and conditions, enabling the Dharma, the Buddha to turn the wheel of Dharma. And all the beings have existed through the many, many generations, many centuries, from the time of the Buddha down to now, who've preserved, learned about, practiced, and passed on this lineage of wisdom. Look how wonderful it is. Rejoice. So we make prayers then, through the power of this merit, that may all beings be free from suffering and have the happiness of full enlightenment. May all the Guru's lives be long and stable, and may the Buddha Dharma flourish where it has already spread. Where it has not spread, may it come to exist. In short, may all beings be led to the state of freedom from suffering and full enlightenment by a fully qualified mind of the Gurus. May the Dharma flourish everywhere. And especially may this center, Choe continue to grow and flourish, and be able to offer Buddhist teachings and practice to countless sentient beings. And especially may all the wholesome aspirations of everyone who's related to this Dharma center in any way, all the students, teachers, benefactors, volunteers, anyone who sees, hears, thinks, talks about Choe, whether they hurt, whether they intend harm or well or help, may they all be free from every suffering and have every happiness. Positive quality to enlightenment. So then let's dedicate this king of prayers. I bow down to the youthful Arya Manjushri, reliance amongst humans, gone to freedom in the past, present, past, and future, in the worlds of 10 directions. To all of you with body, speech, and sincere mind, I bow down. With the energy of aspiration for the Bodhisattva way, with a sense of deep respect, and with as many bodies as atoms of the world, to all you Buddhas visualized as real, I bow down. In every atom are Buddhas numberless as atoms, each amidst the host of Bodhisattvas, and I am confident the sphere of all phenomena is entirely filled with Buddhas in this way. With infinite oceans of praise for you, and oceans of sound from the aspects of my voice, I sing the breathtaking excellence of the Buddhas, and celebrate all of you gone to bliss. Beautiful flowers and regal garlands, sweet music, scented oils and parasols, sparkling lights and sublime incense, I offer to you, victorious ones. Fine dress and fragrant perfumes, sandalwood powder heaped high as Mount Meru, all wondrous offerings in spectacular array, I offer to you, victorious ones. With transcendent offerings, peerless and vast, with profound admiration for all the Buddhas, with strength of conviction in the Bodhisattva way, I offer and bow down to all the victorious ones. Whatever harmful action I have done, with my body, speech, and mind, overwhelmed by attachment, anger, and confusion, all these I openly lay bare before you. I lift up my heart and rejoice in all positive potential of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in 10 directions, of solitary realizers here still training, and those beyond and of all ordinary beings. You who are the bright lights of worlds in 10 directions, who have attained a Buddha's omniscience, the stages of awakening, all you who are my guides, please turn the supreme wheel of Dharma. With palms together I earnestly request, you who may actualize Parimvanan, please free as numbers as atoms of the world, for the happiness and well-being of all wonders in samsara. Whatever slight positive potential I may have created, by paying homage, offering, and acknowledging my thoughts, rejoicing and requesting that the Buddhas stay and teach, I now dedicate all this for full awakening. May you Buddhas now live in the worlds of 10 directions, all you gone to freedom in the past accept my offerings, and those not yet arisen quickly perfect their minds, awakening as fully enlightened ones. May all worlds in 10 directions be entirely pure and vast. May they be filled with bodhisattvas surrounding Buddhas gathered beneath a Bodhi tree. May as many beings as exist in the 10 directions be always well and happy. May all samsaric beings living in accord with Dharma, and may their every Dharma wish be fulfilled. Remembering my past lives and all their lives, may I practice the Bodhisattva way, and thus in each cycle of death, migration, and birth, may always abandon householder's life, then following in the footsteps of all the Buddhas and perfecting the practice of Bodhisattva, may always act without error or compromise, with ethical discipline faultless and pure. May I teach the Dharma in the language of gods, in every language of spirits and eras, of humans and of demons, and in the voice of every form of being. May I be gentle-minded, cultivating the 6 paramitas, and never forget bodhicitta. May I completely cleanse without omission every negativity and all that obscures this awakening mind. May I traverse all my lives in the world, free of karma, afflictions, and interfering forces, just as the lotus blossom is undisturbed by the water's wave, just as the sun and moon move unhindered through the sky. May I ease the suffering in the lower realms, and in the many directions and dimensions of the universe. May I guide all wonders in samsara, through the pure bliss of awakening, and be of worldly benefit to them as well. May I practice constantly for eons to come, perfecting the activities of awakening, acting in harmony with the various dispositions of beings, showing the way as a bodhisattva. May I always have the friendship of those whose path is like mine, and with body, words, and also mind. May we practice together the same aspirations and activities. May I also meet a spiritual mentor, and never displease that excellent friend who deeply wishes to help me, and expertly teaches the bodhisattva way. May I always directly see the Buddhas and assist encircled by bodhisattvas, and without pause or discouragement for eons to come, may I make extensive offerings to them. May I hold within me the Buddha's genuine Dharma, illuminate everywhere the teachings that awaken, embody the realizations of the bodhisattva, and practice ardently in all future eons. While serving through all states of existence, may I become an endless treasure of good qualities, skillful means, wisdom, samadhi, and liberated stabilizations, gathering them as pristine wisdom and positive attention. On one atom I shall see Buddha fields numberless as atoms, inconceivable Buddha and so on bodhisattvas in every field, practicing the activities of awakening. Receiving this in all directions, I dive into an ocean of Buddha fields, each an ocean of 3 times Buddhas in the space of a wisp of hair. So I too will practice for an ocean of eons. Thus I may continually immersed in the speech of the Buddhas, expression that reveals an ocean of qualities in one word, the completely pure eloquence of all the Buddhas, communication suited to the varied tendencies of beings. With strength of understanding I plunge into the infinite enlightened speech of the Dharma, of all Buddhas in 3 times harmony freedom, who continually turn the wheel of Dharma methods. I shall experience in one moment such vast activity of all future eons, and then I will enter into all eons of the 3 times, in but a fraction of a second. In one instant I shall sheathe those awakening beings, past, present, and future alliance amongst humans, and with the power of the illusion-like stabilization, I will constantly engage in their inconceivable activity. I shall manifest upon one single atom the array of pure lands, present, past, and future. Likewise I shall enter the array of pure Buddha fields, in every direction without exception. I shall enter the very presence of all my guides, those lights of this world who are yet to appear, thus sequentially turning the wheels of complete awakening, those who reveal nirvana and final perfect peace. May I achieve the power of swift magical emanation, the power to lead to the great vehicle through every approach, the power of always beneficial activity, the power of love pervading all realms, the power of all surpassing positive potential, the power of supreme knowledge unobstructed by discrimination, and through the powers of wisdom, skillful means, and samadhi, may I achieve the perfect power of awakening, purifying the power of all contaminated actions, crushing the power of disturbing emotions at the root, diffusing the power of interfering forces. I shall perfect the power of the bodhisattva practice. May I purify an ocean of worlds, may I free an ocean of beings, may I clearly see an ocean of Dharma, may I realize an ocean of pristine wisdom, may I purify an ocean of activities, may I fulfill an ocean of aspirations, may I make offerings to an ocean of wills, may I practice without discouragement for an ocean of eons. To awaken fully to this bodhisattva way, I shall fulfill without exception all the diverse aspirations of the awakening practice, of all Buddhas gone to freedom in the 3 times of the way. Exactly as the wise one, called Samantabhadra and Grace and Khor. They are the better of the sons and daughters of the Buddhas. I completely dedicate all the skills. Likewise, may I dedicate just as the skillful Samantabhadra, with pure body, speech, and mind, pure actions, and pure Buddha fields. I shall give rise to the aspirations of Manjushri, for this bodhisattva practice of all embracing good, to perfect these practices without discouragement or pause in all future eons. May my pure activities be endless, may my good qualities boundless, may my abiding and immeasurable activity may actualize the infinite emanations. Limitless is aim space, likewise limitless are living beings. Thus limitless are karma and afflictions, and my aspirations reach be limitless as well. One may offer to the Buddhas all wealth and adornment of infinite worlds in 10 directions, and one may offer during eons numberless atoms of the world, even the greatest happiness of gods and humans. But whoever hears this extraordinary aspiration and longing for highest awakening, give rise to faith just once, creates far more precious positive potential. Those who make this heartfelt aspiration for the Bodhisattva way will be free of all lower rebirths, free of harmful pains, and will quickly see Amitabha infinite light. And even in this very life, they will be nourished by happiness and have all conducive circumstances. Without waiting long, they will become like Samantabhadra himself. Those who give voice to this extraordinary aspiration will quickly and completely purify the 5 boundless harmful actions created under the power of ignorance. Blessed with supreme knowledge, excellent body, family attributes, and appearance, they will be invincible to vast interfering forces and deceiving teachers, and all the 3 worlds will make offerings. Going quickly to the noble Bodhi tree, and sitting there to benefit beings, subduing all interfering forces, they will fully awaken and turn the great wheel of Dharma. I have no doubt that complete awakening is the fully right result, comprehended only by a Buddha, of holding in mind by teaching, reading, or reciting this aspiration of the Bodhisattva practice. In order to train just like the hero Manjushri who knows reality as it is, and just like Samantabhadra as well, I completely dedicate all this goodness just as they did. With that dedication which is praised the greatest by all the Buddhas calling freedom in the 3 times, I too dedicate all my roots of goodness for the attainment of the Bodhisattva practice. When the moment of my death arrives, by limiting all obscurations and directly perceiving Amitabha, may I be immediately in Subhati, the pure land of great joy. Having gone to Sukhavati, may I actualize the meaning of these aspirations, fulfilling them all without exception, for the benefit of beings for as long as this world endures. Born from extremely beautiful, supreme and glorious, in this joyful land of Buddha's magnificent mandala, may I receive a practice of my awakening directly from the Buddha Amitabha. Having received my prediction there, may I create vast benefit for beings throughout the 10 directions, with the billion emanations by the power of wisdom. Through even the small virtue of average level, I offer this prayer of the Bodhisattva practice. May all the positive aspirations of beings be fulfilled in an instant. Through creating limitless positive potential, by dedicating the prayer of Samantabhadra's deeds, may all beings drowning in this torrent of suffering enter the presence of Amitabha. Through this king of aspirations, which is the greatest of the sublime, helping the infinite wonders in samsara, through the accomplishment of this scripture dazzling with Samantabhadra's practice, may suffering grows fear utterly empty of all beings. So we'll conclude there. What's the next program at the center? You know?
I haven't got
You're welcome.
no, I don't know actually right now.
Okay. You can check the website.
When are you coming again, Ren?
I don't know also.
Yeah.
I'm not sure yet. Probably about a month from now. A little over.
Month.
Month
I
and a
had
half.
asked Indrani, she said probably that weekend of 20, 21st something is fixed, she said.